I love it when Mae Brussell says in one of her videos, she says, I was raised to be stupid. Just like that. She's very smart. But I heard what she said, and I'm quite sure all the rest did too. She's talking about the education system, and she's talking about the media. That what's being pumped into our heads is not truth. It's orchestrated truth. They're carving out facts and truth with regards to JFK, with regards to history itself. They're just carving out facts and truth to give us a narrative that this is what happened, but they're not telling the rest of the story. That's where, if you know those truths, everything changes. These are people who are orchestrating our minds. It is mind control. This is nothing new. It may be a new term for us, but it's been going on long before Jesus appeared on the scene. This is how you enslave people, with false dogma, fear-mongering, warmongering, that somehow your leaders can't figure out how to build safety and peace of neighboring nations. They can't figure out how to pour out the parity upon their citizens they say they love, provide equality and the very basic needs of life for those who are going to be a part of their community. No. It's all about them and their power and their wealth and their high tech and everything they can have, and then they'll mete out truth or technology or whatever just to give something to the people, so the people will applaud how wonderful this government is, this empire. It has this problem, to look at the good it's done. Well, that's not good enough for me. You don't want the lesser of two evils when you're voting people in for power. You don't want to have a lesser of anything than this first law of God, no matter who you are in this world. John chapter 8, verses 3, 5, and number 7. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they say unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. But what sayest thou? So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him cast a stone at her. Well, this is not about a literal stone. There is a beautiful revelation here. This has nothing to do with a literal woman or a literal stone. Coming up in this video, we'll talk more about the feminine and the masculine nature within us. The feminine is the desire. We are to honor the divine feminine, which is that all-good desire. And we are to create it. We create it by way of the divine masculine within us. This has nothing to do with literal women or literal men. It's within all of us. Our divine feminine is the all-good desire. It's from that immaculate conception that the Virgin Mary desires are birthed, that give birth to the Christ creations. We are all born blameless and in love. Most people are truly not living to do harm to others, except for ones who have a legal right to, because their laws deny the first law of God. The stone the builders of man's laws rejected. So the woman taken into adultery is about us. That's about our desires, you as a human being, that your desires are no longer the desire of the all-good, that this is what you're going to create into the world. No, now you're lusting after other desires, a different way. You are committing spiritual adultery. You're going to go some other way instead of being married to or bonded with that which created you, blameless and in love. You're going to go some other way. This is your desire. Well, in this case, this woman taken into adultery, she was caught in the very act. This does not have to be about a woman being caught in the act of adultery, literal adultery. She could have been stealing something from a fruit stand. That's substantively the same thing. She's denying the first law of God. She's lusting for another way. She's going to commit adultery and fornicate with some other way. She's not going to honor this first law. She's going to steal that apple from that fruit stand, or she's going to commit literal adultery. Maybe she slapped another person. Whatever it is, all of it falls under the heading that this is the woman that has committed adultery. It's about us, that we have had desires that want to rise and do things to others we don't want done to ourselves, and we gave life to that desire. She was caught in the act. So it's actually the masculine nature of that person. She might have been a literal woman, but it's the masculine nature within her creator nature, that she chose by her will to do what she did. So we are told that she should be stoned. And Jesus says, "Those without sin among you, cast the first stone." Well, all of us have sinned in some measure. We've all done things wrong. But in Scripture, we must believe the promise that we are restored, or quote-unquote resurrected out of our sin. When we sin, we are quote-unquote crucifying the Christ within us. We are denying that first law of God that he exemplified. We're going to do things to others we don't want done to ourselves. But we are restored, and we must believe in this restoration, that we are resurrected. That old temple that did that, we have quote-unquote torn down and rebuilt. It's not a literal temple. We are the temple of the living God. We just ended up soiling it. Well, we're just going to clean it. We must believe in this promise that we can in fact overcome and rise back to this first law and not go that way again. So those humans, and we've all done things we don't want done to ourselves, but those of us who've fallen off the way and restored ourselves to this first law, well, we have restored ourselves to this first stone. We became of ourselves like little Goliaths. We had our own little rules. We're not a legal bureaucratic structure as individuals, but we have our own little rules. And someone did something that was a slight to us, and we decided to solve this issue not with wisdom and doing no harm, but instead we did harm, maybe seditiously, maybe overtly, in order to have our self-gain, to satisfy ourselves and not honor the first law of God. Well, when we do that, we have rejected that stone. We are like a mini version of the Goliath, and the only way we restore is when that stone is restored. Most of us know how to restore it, that we know we have a good conscience. We have this one rabbi up here that knows the difference between that which is good, the building of the good, and that which is not. And most of us are living for self-preservation, to sustain ourselves in this goodness and peace. Nobody wants to have rotten days day after day after day. But this is how it gets fixed before us. There are those who are builders of rotten days, so that the people below shall suffer, while they have their cocktails up top and their islands in the sun. So he that is without sin among you is referring to those of us who are sinners, because we all have. But we are without sin in the sense that we have restored ourselves. We understand this first law. We understand that all of us have been hurt and oppressed. So you see, this verse in the end is entirely about human character. The woman taken into adultery is our desire that has been misled, off the way. Could be for anything, but gets caught in the act. So now you have given that errant desire that denies the first law of God life. Do you want to be stoned, literally, by others? Or do you want to restore yourself? You have the power to reset that stone, the stone the builders rejected. Well, you're a builder. You just rejected it yourself. Reset it. You see? So it's not about stoning women. It's just about you and resetting the stone the builders rejected. That's the stone that gets cast.